Hey gang, Scott Davenport here. Another ON1 tip for you. And sky replacement again? Yeah, someone asked a question I thought was quite interesting is, can I do the sky replacement more rapidly using a texture filter as opposed to going into layers? And the answer is you can. You can actually do a good sky replacement using a texture layer, a combination of two of them for a reflected photo. There are a couple of caveats and a couple of things I want to point out that will help you make sure you get your mask really well. So let's get into it here. So this is the same photo I did this previous video on, which link in the show notes here, probably a little icon popping up somewhere, you can check it out. Where we did layers. This time we're going to use textures. So I've got my basics done to the photo already. First thing I'm going to do, add a filter, textures. Now in the previous video, I used from the skies category, it was skies 34. So let's do the same exact thing. 34. Okay. Now the first thing we see is, all right, the sky is looking pretty okay. Of course, the rest of the scene is a little strange. We have to do some masking. But the first thing I want to point out, this is like caveat, limitation. There's certain things you can't do with texture layers. But first thing is, the only choices I have is I can flip horizontally or I can flip vertically, and the vertically will come in when we do the reflection. I can make the texture bigger, but I can't go smaller than whatever it is. I can turn off fit to canvas. That didn't make much of a difference for this sky layer or this sky texture. That's as much as I can do, so I can't do much else. Now, the upside is the blend already looks pretty darn good around the trees. And we can add a little bit more of that sky to show through. This is the opacity of the texture. And right now, I am just watching the top half of the screen here. And I'm going to keep it all the way to 100%. I like the mode subtle. I will come back to that mode because that comes in handy when you want to make sure you've got your mask correct. So let's get to the mask right now. Certainly don't want this everywhere in the scene. So I'll leverage the AI masking tools. I'll just click on the mask icon, get my tools ready to go. AI mask. I want to drop all this stuff and I want to keep what's up in the sky, right? So we'll do that. We'll hit apply here, let that think for a minute and check on its progress. All right, it did okay, a little confused on the house here. We'll clean up that with the brushes. So I'll hit done on that, go back to my masking tools and get the brush, paint out. I like to use the view buttons here. Hit the view button and let's get that brush a little more organized. Full opacity, feather is fine. We will take advantage of the perfect brush and then just get in there on that chimney right like that. I no longer need the perfect brush and I can just finish that off there. So we've got a decent mask. AI mask did a good job there. Turn off the view. And now we see, okay, looking pretty okay with the blend. It looks nice around the trees. If we zoom in, how does that look? Not too bad. This is where I want to come back to that mode option. Play around with that because if we start changing things, as I hover over it, we'll start to notice, ooh, if I get lighter, darker, I'm really seeing where the mask is good, but not great. And so I'm going to leave this set now at darker. Let me zoom back out to 100%. And we can see spots that we need to clean up, right? Masking brush, paint out, opacity 100. We'll use the perfect brush, and I'll use the command click option or control on a Windows machine. That will lock the color sample. So I'm pressing that key right now, and then I'm clicking once, and I chose paint out. Scott, you got to paint in. You want to have that texture showing up. Okay, do that again. There we go. Through there. You get the idea. I'll do this one kind of quickly, and we'll keep the video moving here. So using this mode can help you see where your mask needs refinement. Now I want to switch that back because subtle looks pretty darn nice, right? We'll zoom in there. That looks good. It looks good around the trees. Check this out over here. Looks good there. Looks good in the gap. Okay. Zoom out. So the texture and the way it's blending with the photo, it can be leveraging some of the blend modes underneath, right? We've got, the mode is subtle. It's maybe tapping into some of the blend modes we have in layers as well. You get a nicer, cleaner mask, and it was pretty quick, right? That was pretty quick. Well, now we want to do this for the reflection. We add a second texture layer. For this, let's close down the masking area. I want to turn off the solo mode, which I normally use, because we want to use these same settings, right? I want to use all these same options. I had a scale of 4, the right sky texture. When I add my second texture, if I turned off that solo mode, I can see both of them now. It just makes it easier for me to dial in the settings. All right, so skies, it was 34. There we go. And a scale was 4. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Great. And so I don't lose track of what I'm doing here. Double click on that one, and let's call this the reflection. And we'll double click on this one, and that's the sky itself. So the sky, we dialed in all these settings. Reflection we have. The last bit I need to do for the reflection is flip it, right? Because I want to have a reflection going on. Now it's still looking a little weird because I'm seeing the texture on the entire photo. We haven't done any masking to limit the reflection to just the lower part of the scene. If you watch the previous video, I leveraged luminosity masks and then fine-tuned it with the brush. The same thing applies here. In the reflection area, open up that mask. This is our texture layer. We named reflection. I'll hit lumen. That will mask the texture away from the darker areas. If I view that mask, I still have some of that texture going on in the sky and in the houses. I don't want that. I only want it down here. Well, I can add to my luminosity mask with a masking bug. I'll just drop that right on there. And now I'm hiding that texture from the top part of the photo and having a nice, smooth, intricate blend courtesy of the luminosity mask in the bottom part where there's a reflection. Now we can play with density to raise or lower things. I tend not to like to use that with this technique because you notice it's adding things back into the top. Notice it gets lighter gray, some of that texture comes through. So with that, we'll turn it off. And from here, it becomes a matter of, well, how much of this sky do I want to show through? This is a very light reflection, so I would want to add a little more to this. So painting in to add, maybe at an opacity of, let's try low 20 with a big feather. We can make a pretty big brush and start to add in more of that reflection. So I'm painting in more of this sky texture in the foreground just to get to a point where I like it. Let's say that is good for this scene. The one other caveat with using the texture filter for sky replacements and making reflections is you only get that single flip. I can't move the reflection. I can't stretch the reflection, short of scaling it. If you recall from the video I did this in layers, I actually did a little bit of a horizontal stretch because that happens when we see reflection. You can things get stretched out. And I also was able to position the sky and the reflection to be really close mirror images of one another. I don't get that luxury with using the texture filters. So in this scene, in this sky, it kind of works, right? We have this chunk of clouds up here. We have it now down here. It kind of feels normal, and this is a photo well suited for it because what's being reflected, this is right around the horizon, right? Our middle point is the break, or I should say our horizon is in the middle. That's what I'm really trying to say. The horizon's in the middle, and so that provides a good natural flip for a vertical flip. If this were shifted higher or lower, this technique will fall short of a more natural looking reflection. So you need to go to do layers. That's the option we have. So limitation, With the texture layer, all I can do is scale. I can't like shift it horizontally. It's just the limitations of what we have. I realize I forgot one thing. Looking at our opacity here on the reflection, I forgot to bring that all the way up. So we'll actually see more of that reflection show up. One more control that we have, and let's nudge that basically all the way up. That's looking pretty nice. So yeah, that's the way to do a sky replacement using textures. I think the key takeaway is it works, and it does a very good job for the blend on the top half of the photo. The limitation is photos where the horizon's in the middle, it'd be pretty good to go. If the horizon shifted higher or lower in the frame, you may have more challenges of getting a natural looking reflection. So the thing I'd suggest is use the texture method for the sky, especially if you have an intricate tree line. That blends very nice and smooth. And then use a layer for the lower part, and you get the best of both worlds. Hope you found this interesting, useful, and if you've got questions, go ahead and drop them below. Until next time, my name's Scott Davenport. Have fun.